Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Is It a Real Classic, a podcast about movies and TV shows where a bunch of well-versed folks come together and answer that age-old debate about what constitutes a classic. I am your host, Litnick, and here with me are my lovely co-hosts and fellow podcasters, Mr. John Wick Jared. Say hello, John Wick Jared. We're just going to pretend like I said hello there. We have Cobra Kai KP.
I like that.
I told you I came up with new names.
Hello.
I got Bad Times at the El Justine.
Oh, wow, I'll take that one. I'll take it.
Okay, listen, trying to find a movie name with the word Justin in it that wasn't just Justice, it was very hard. And
I bet. I mean, that is difficult. I cannot name one, and it's my name, so.
yeah,
Justin League would have been a tribute.
it would have been, but how many times am I going to get the chance to say Bad Times at the El Justine?
I'll take it. I'll take it.
We'll see if it doesn't work. We'll work with something else. And we're back at it in this episode, talking about Watchmen, specifically the back end of Watchmen, episodes 6 through 9, where just every episode seems to just top itself over and over again. But because he wasn't in the first episode, I'm going to throw it over quickly to Justin to share with us his thoughts on episodes 1 through 5 before we go into more specifics. Hey, Justin, what did you think of the first 5 episodes?
Well, I love the intro. I'm glad it's a important piece of history that's kind of been glossed over for a long time, and I was really impressed that they started out with something so strong as, the Tulsa Massacre, that's real history. That's not made up Watchmen history. That happened. And the way the show just took off from there.
Well, you know what? Yeah, he is right. It is something amazing. He may come in and out of this little podcast Discord call, having some technical difficulties, but we're gonna wait for that. How are we feeling today about episode 6 through 9, AP and Senior Jared?
I was I was ready to talk about it. I could have done the whole podcast the first day. I'm fired up about it.
And so, yeah, this second half is where things go off the rails in terms of just everything that happens. You have this extraordinary being, which is a stellar episode. Welcome back, Justin. Welcome back.
Oh, hello.
Hello. All right.
Here.
What? We're a bit scatterbrained this morning, so you have to, pardon us with that kind of stuff. But like I was saying, we have episodes, This Extraordinary Being, an almost religious god walks into a bar, and then we have See How They Fly as our final 4 episodes. Now, before we cap it off and go into those, do you have any final thoughts about the first 5 episodes, Mr. Justin?
Just totally impressed with how it kept advancing the plot with a lot of different angles, but without seeming too cluttered. That's hard to do. It's difficult, and they did a good job of it.
It is
You had
very hard.
so many things going on, and it didn't feel like anything got left out or left under. And then they kept introducing new threads, too, so difficult.
Oh, yeah. Like, it kind of takes a lot of, and we mentioned in the first episode, where the show is taking a lot of obvious nods from the original Watchmen comic and just sort of, it just takes the style and the structure of it and makes it function and work as well as it does.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really quite amazing. But
To some degree, do you guys think the last few episodes, like they set the plate so broad and well, and then they turned around and went specifically into one character's history and one character's development for like 3 straight episodes?
that's a good question. What do we think?
Narrowed the scope a little bit going into the final episode.
What do we think?
I liked it. I thought it really... I didn't think about it until now, but now that I'm looking at it, you're exactly right. But I thought it personalized it a lot more.
Oh, it made it way better.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. The whole thing is like like a couple episodes like before now. You see like they start to do a little more character centric stuff, which is again very similar to the way the comic handled it. But it isn't until this extraordinary being, and then you had an almost religious awe, and then you followed up with a guy walks into a bar. And even before that, you had the episode Little Fear of Lightning, which just felt like they were intense character pieces talking about these specific people and the relationships and why they function and why they work and all this other stuff. Like,
And nobody got neglected.
no one got neglected. And what's I found like so fascinating, I'll talk about it with one specific episode, um, is the fact that it still manages to keep the plot moving forward. It still keeps like all the characters. It doesn't feel stagnant because sometimes when you watch a TV show or read a comic or something, there will always be that one episode that's the flashback episode that you're like, I know what happened. This dude has a gun to his head. Can we skip to that part, please?
Yeah,
Because I'm
exactly.
on pins and needles about how this is going to turn out, and you don't just get to say, and now we're having a flashback. And I mean, like, that's just a personal thing for me where I'm like, you know what the audience wants, and you're teasing us at this point, and sometimes it's like, oh, this is fun, to like, oh, this is just annoying now. You know?
There's a fine line between those two things.
Oh, yeah, very fine line. Very fine line indeed.
I do feel like there was one character that was neglected, and that was Lube Man, who was not seen after his brief appearance. I feel like I wanted.
I know who that is.
We should talk about.
I needed more.
Was
it Petey?
Petey. That's Petey.
Yeah, it was Petey.
I bet
totally
you money it's
Petey.
Petey.
The thing is, right? This is kind of a funny thing. Just like in the comic, there are these online segments where like you can just read in some backstory stuff, like the Petey, I believe it was called, where it goes into the backstory of like some certain things, gives you more details. Again, similar to the way the comic had like the original Night Owl's like journal and book and whatnot. And it's only in those things where you can find out they confirm the identity of Lube Man as Petey. And it's like, it's only there for people who wanted to do the research and go into the background. Otherwise, Lube Man does not matter. Which I found to be, I don't know how we feel about that as a whole, but I just find that to be kind of like a fun little nod to the comic. But I can understand people like, well, that was just pointless. Why did we do this?
Well, why not?
That's, yep, you have a point there. Alright. I'm going to go into some specifics now, specifically on a couple episodes. This extraordinary being. What an episode. Episode 6, I started us off hot with the backstory of Will Reeves, who we saw in the very first episode. And we see him as an older man as he said that he strung up your chief of police. And we find out that Will Reeves was actually Hooded Justice from the comic. Like the very first hero that we see little to nothing about in, like, the comics and stuff. And we learn about him through this episode. And there's a lot to unpack here. What do we think about that whole take on the comic and how it separates and does what it does, I guess, is the best way to phrase it. KP, your thoughts on this episode?
Well, I thought that it was just done again. Everything was done really well. You got taking a whole episode, giving the backstory of not only of basically the Mask Heroes in specifically, and also how that evolves into Gossett Jr.'s character and the granddaughter, and that was. I just really was blown away by how well this throwback in time through taking the pills tells the stories of everybody by telling the story of one guy.
Oh yeah, like the transitions that this episode had were next. Like when like Will like busts through a door and goes from the outside, from the inside of the police station to just directly onto the street, and then you see him in the literally the middle of the street and like across town, and then you see him bust through the doors again to go back inside and yell at a bunch of cops. That like, and there's also like there's one transition because she's taking nostalgia at a point, and their explanation for this in the show is the fact that she's basically overdosing, so she's getting way too many memories at once. Is the fact that there's that moment where the cop pulls up next to Will and says, "Hey, you want me to take a drive home?" And Will says, "No, I'm good." And the car drives off. And as it drives off, you see two of the bodies from the Tulsa massacre being dragged behind it. The only slightly. That is. The visuals for that just hurt on that little bit. It's great, but it's like, yikes.
The attention to detail to write into the script why she is getting all these memories at once, like because she OD'd. You know what I mean? It's clever to write your excuse.
Absolutely, it is very, very much this really smart way to handle it. Jared, what do we think?
I think that the parallels between her story and her grandfather's story are phenomenal. I just love seeing that, and, like, watching her flash between the actor playing her grandfather and her was just great. I love those so much because they really were in very similar positions. They're way more connected than they were, and they like never knew each other, but they're so similar.
Right, Angela and Will are basically the same character in different generations.
Exactly.
You can even tell that by the way they put on their outfit, because like Will used to like literally turn like the front part of his like eyesight white, so that way people would assume that he was white underneath the mask. And then you have Sister Night. What does she do? She spray paints her eyes black so that way no one can see who she is. It's that small little attention to detail that, like, you realize, like, if you had read the comic, you could have maybe been like, "Huh, we never really see Hood Justice." But the thing is, like, it's a thing you would never have caught. I don't think it's such a small and like subtle move that just it's so good.
Also, Will having to be white in order to be a hero is a little hollow too. You know what I mean? It's good it makes you feel hollow. In order to go do good, he's got to be white. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You ain't gonna get justice with that badge, Will Reeves. Gonna get justice with that hood is like the exact quote I remember correctly.
And I really like, and I call it that they throw back to Bass Reeves. That's how he took his name, because Bass Reeves was a real dude and was really as cool as they make him out. You know, that's the basis of the Lone Ranger. And what did they do with Lone Ranger? They turned him white.
And it's just like, you know, as a random aside, to kind of go with what Justin was saying, we need a Bass Reeves movie. Not to, like, I know I'm getting slightly off track, but I want a Bass Reeves movie. I mean, come on.
There is a Bass Reeves movie on Amazon, and it is not great.
It is not a great movie. But the thing is, like, we're going to get, like, a new Bass Reeves movie, I think, directed by the woman who's doing The Eternals, and I think there's an Amazon Prime show. This is going off track, but it's a cool little thought.
Go ahead.
Yes. All right. Hello. Yeah. Did you have any final thoughts, by the way, on this episode?
I think you get it on head.
Yeah.
All right. Then following this, we have a couple more episodes. We have an almost religious God walks into a bar and then see how they fly, and there are a lot of things. We can go into every episode if you want to go into like extreme detail, but the episode I really want to talk about is A God Walks Into a Bar, which is, in my opinion, the best written and the best episode of television I have ever seen. There is just a lot of craft put into that single episode that feels exactly like literally the comic issue of just Dr. Manhattan and Laurie talking. Like, it just feels exactly like that issue, and also just like we said this earlier about like how I was able to like make an entire push the story forward while also being a flashback. This whole episode technically takes place over a single date, if you think about it, and it still progresses the plot forward. It still gives you a lot of backstory, and every little bit, just like, and it's gonna sound kind of cheesy because you know clocks and stuff. Like just a clock slowly working together with the cogs moving forward, which is just, ooh, that's so good. Me and KP were talking about this earlier. We hinted on this about Yaya's performance, or Yaha. I apologize. I don't know how to say your name. I haven't looked it up. his performance as Cal and Dr. Manhattan, but we wanted to save that for this episode because I didn't want to spoil it for those who hadn't seen it yet. So, KP, if you want to take a little bit of the reins on this.
Now, I would mess it up, but it's Yahya
Yahya. Yes, the second, I believe.
Okay. He hits it out of the park, but like you were saying about this episode specifically, well, first of all, he's so docile for the first 6 episodes. And you wonder, what's up with this dude? You know what I mean? And because his wife is so out front. But then, again, family dynamics being what they are, he is kind of the perfect husband and the perfect mate for her and counterpoint to who she is. But then when it's revealed he's Dr. Manhattan, and first of all, I never quite got, through a movie and a novel, I never quite got how Dr. Manhattan relates time until I saw him sit down with Regina's character and tell me, and how he could, and you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you start realizing what he goes through. Also, the character Cal Labar and Dr. Manhattan are not that different in temperament anyway.
They really aren't. Like, there's a thing I wanted to promote Yahya's performance here because we've only really had one performance of the Good Doctor, and that was in Zack Snyder's Watchmen. And while that performance was good, and I think Yahya brought something to the character that you don't really see in the comics, and you don't really see. Well, it's kind of hinted at in the comics, but you don't see in the movie because he's trying to play the straight-laced God among men, all these mortals and blah blah blah, which is it works for the character. It works. That is literally his entire character. But there's a little bit of odd through these silent moments. You can tell there's a small bit of humanity still in him.
Correct.
And there's a little bit of him wanting to be human again. You can see through his silent moments, the way he kind of smiles at people, the way he kind of feels nostalgic on things almost. You can tell this is someone who has been a god for so long that he just misses being human. And he doesn't say that outright. He never does, but because he's still so matter of fact about it. But you can tell that there's this little hidden thing in the back of his throat about what he just desperately is looking for, but is so caught up in the time thing that he can't really put it into words because his mind is scattered across the dimensions. And
correct me if I'm wrong.
That. Go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it also feels like Dr. Manhattan could rule with an iron fist if he felt like it. No.
Yes, he could.
And there's so much of you have your own will in him, which is biblical in some ways too. You know what I mean? It just blown away by the way he was able to bring all that together through the way he looks at her, the way he thinks about things, the way he explains things, the way he describes the egg, all those things.
He gets across the tragic nature of that character.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to, harkens back to the Greek. What was the worst curse the Greek gods ever gave somebody was to see the future. So there was never surprises. You can see that in him that hurts him.
Yeah.
Huh? Right.
Jared, do you have any thoughts on this episode?
I think this episode had it had a pun in the title. It had full frontal nudity. It had everything I could possibly... No, it was... Because my favorite issue in the comic is the one where Manhattan and Lorian are on Mars and talking. And I think it is kind of a microcosm of why I like the comic so much and why I like the show so much, that it's still very life affirming, if that makes sense. Where the show is dark and dark things happen and it sucks and all that, but it's still at the very core of it just people trying to get by and trying to connect with each other. And with the issue on Mars, John kind of sees that life can be random and beautiful. And in the show, he sees that humans, even if they know the future, they'll still fight as hard as they can. And that moment where he says that he falls in love with her when she still wants to fight to save him despite knowing the future, that was so perfect. That was awesome.
Oh, that line is still
That
so
again,
good.
I was just like, oh man, I instantly teared up. I was like, dog, that rules. That's fantastic.
And you do get that little bit of catharsis where he just annihilates the 7th Cavalry for a little bit.
It feels good, but again, it's still tragic because it's like, man, this is it's not. I know it's going to end poorly.
He says it at the beginning, like, it will end terribly. And do you want to do this? And she says, yeah, why not? One of my favorite like moments in that episode is actually that transition from where Angela is fighting with Cal, and he just walks off and teleports immediately away to see Ozzy. Because like they play Mr. Blue by the Fleetwoods.
Mm-hmm.
All the songs in this episode are Blue related. Can't we? like, all right, I get we're doing puns here, but come on. I mean, we have tons
He's
of
blue because he's sad, you know.
I know, but it's like
I don't know, but again, yeah, it works. It totally works 100% of the time. It's
yeah, it's like even then it's talking about doubts and stuff in that song, and he's like literally walking to see Ozymandias as he looks upon his mighty works and literally despairs because everything has fallen apart in the way that he didn't want. Why are you still making those God-forsaken bonds? It's just, mwah, it's such a really fun way to take those characters and to move them around, and 100% that whole tragic thing about like I fell in love with you now was just it's very good. And then we of course have our ending, which do we want to talk about the very end of this show? I mean, I do want to talk a little bit about Will's little speech because I feel like that's just like the perfect encapsulation of the show. But do we have thoughts on the grand finale of See How They Fly? Toss over to KP first.
I do think a little bit that the senator is not going to get the credit for how well he played that part.
Oh, he was such a jerk. You just wanted him to eat it, didn't
You
you?
want to punch him in the face.
He's
Great
heel.
great. He was
Great
great.
heel.
You know, just smart enough and just dumb enough to be right where he was and screw it all up. You know? And by the same token, he is on the cusp of all knowing, all powerful. And it would be hard for anybody to not be consumed by that. You know, and the character is an evil, you know, the thought process is bad, but by the same token, it had to be enticing for the guy. And I thought he did a really good job of seeming aloof and dumb and somewhat clever all at one time.
Yeah. He really is the perfect politician, I guess. Like he has the moniker, he has the vernacular. But if you notice, like, that's a fun fact I didn't bring it up last episode, but Senator Keene is actually the son, and you do see his father, of Keene from the comic who made the Keene Act, which outlawed masks.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like a small little thing to add, but like it's a like sweep by and you miss it kind of cameo. And it's just,
Yeah.
I didn't catch that my first time I saw it. I had to I was going like looking through the comic again, like the Keene Act. We're doing this again? Oh wait, hold on. It's just like again, like the show has so many like thought put into the details. It's so good. But all right, what are our thoughts on the final episode, Mr. Justin? Because there's a lot in that episode.
Oh, it goes a long way. I love the tying all the strings together. They did really well. That gold statue has been Adrian Veidt the whole time.
The whole time.
You thought, you know, that was hilarious. And I thought Beyond, the little girl, I thought she did a great job. She's a great little actress. I thought her character She did a great job with that character through the whole series. And True was amazing. I like her as a villain.
You know, we don't really talk really much about Lady True, but she really is another really... Again, everyone's really knocking it out of the park, but she's another slept-on performance, I think, in the show.
Dude, when her mom impregnates herself, looking at the picture...
Oh, yeah. That's literally the
hilarious.
She's actually quoting the original legend of Lady True when she does that. Because Lady True is a figure from Vietnamese folklore and history. So it's really interesting the fact that she's just literally quoting Lady True as she just, for lack of a better phrase.
God, the sound effect. It's one of those things where Watchmen kind of mixes the absurd with the deadly serious. It's great. I love that.
It's such a powerful satire in that way, and a parody.
And like Justin said too, when they tie it all together at the end, they're in that last little run. Every character is involved.
Everybody serves purpose.
Yes. Every single character is either fighting for evil or fighting for justice or trying to make it. Everybody is right there in that final scene. It snowballs into the end. It's just wonderful.
It really is. It really is. But there are two big points at the very end of that final episode. One of which being the Will Reeves speech, which we alluded to earlier. About. Oh. KP said a little something on it, but first I'm going to throw it over to Jared real quick about his thoughts on the final episode.
I like the final episode quite a bit. Not as much as... Because I do think I'm with you with God Walks into Abar is like the episode for me. But I like this episode. I love the speech in the theater. I just love the quietness and like the full circle coming back to the theater that, the very first scene took place in. I love that. Yeah. I love that kind of circular stuff in shows and movies and all that. It was great.
Throw it over to KP for his thoughts on that speech, because I remember you told me a little fun little story about when you were watching this for the first time, and that speech came out.
I just kept having to rewind it and watching it again. And he's telling her that the mask isn't about bravery, it's about fear. It's overwhelming, and then having to rip open a wound for it to heal is come on, man. Amazing.
Oh yeah,
Lou Gossett Jr. man was so good.
He was so good. Again, we were gonna. I've saved this episode for us to talk about, but that's another one of those. Because this show is full of great performances, but that performance was also, and on that specific episode, he got to shine. He got to bring his A game because they gave him the meat to do it, and you love to see it. You really do.
Yeah, I made I made my son take off his headphones. I said, if you want to see what acting is, watch this, and I just showed him that scene, and because I felt like. Just the way he communicated all of that without leaving a chair, without it, just him, his voice, his face. He just made you feel everything.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, we do have in this episode, and the spoiler in case we even knew we were going into spoilers. The death of Dr. Manhattan, the surprising death of Dr. Manhattan. And the possible passing of the torch to Angela to be the new Dr. Manhattan. There is much to talk about, but I do want to say that, again, kind of thrown over to Yaha's performance, is just that final bit where he says where this final thing is like, I'm in every moment with you. Before he dies, and he's just happy in that final moment before he dies. It's one of those. It's like it's a hopeless romantic in me. It's just like that's just such a beautiful thing. And then we have our ending, which is Angela eating a raw egg, which may or may not give her salmonella, or may give her superpowers. So kids, try it at home. So it ends very much on this kind of like, will she get the powers? Will she not get the powers? And then just ends. And what I find kind of funny is, y'all know what this episode is like. The name is literally "See How They Fly." You know what that's a reference to, right? Because they play it at the end, right?
No. Is there a reference to the song?
There's a reference to the song "I Am the Walrus,"
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
which is, if I remember correctly, and you correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe Ray can correct me on this. I believe it was written by the Beatles to kind of make a joke about people stop trying to like pull meaning out of their songs and just enjoy them. So I feel like that's a little bit of like the writer kind of like making a jab at like that final scene of like, everyone's gonna have their say on it, just go for the ride. Just go
Yeah, there you
for
go.
the ride. Just accept it. It's fine. It's fine. It's a little small bit there. It was like, alright.
The use of the egg and her walking to the pool and the foot over the pool, it does have this feeling of hope.
It really does. Like she could like fall at her face. It could be a joke by Cal on her, or it can be a legitimate like thing. But it does kind of lean on the side of hope because the pool illuminates her foot to make it look blue a little bit. It gives like the notion that no, yeah, she's gonna be the one who she's gonna be the next one. And I think there were some complaints about the show in relation to the comic because they're like, oh, really, we gave this lady the powers and blah blah blah. Like, why she wasn't even in the first comic? I feel like the whole point of a god walks into a bar and an almost religious awe, and this episode and the entire series is a defense as to why she has to be the next one, because she experiences all of time in those previous episodes, and she is able to see time as a flat circle, which is the way that our boy Doc Manhattan does. But also the fact that she innately still is, because when the original John went into the thing, he wasn't a perfect guy. He wasn't like, just because he got turned into a god didn't automatically fix his personality flaws. They're still there. So I think that was him just kind of like saying that you are truly my successor because you do not have the faults that I had. And a kind of a passing of the torch of just like accepting that.
Well, and they also established her as the granddaughter of the first masked
That's
superhero.
also very true.
So bestowing powers on her doesn't sound like a bad thing. It sounds like this is how, if you're going to give them to anybody, who would you give them to?
You give it to the person who knows justice the most, and who better knows justice than the granddaughter of Hooded Justice.
Yeah,
I was gonna say Lube Man, but I guess that's like a good. Angela's like a good second option.
That's true.
Petey's going to get his moment.
Petey will get his
Also,
moment.
we didn't really hit on the episode that was about her childhood.
All right, we can definitely talk about that episode.
So that whole episode, though, also lends itself to why she has to be the one.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of trials and tribulations that she's fought through to be where she is before Dr. Manhattan walks into that bar. And that episode appropriately connects Reeves to her story and to Dr. Manhattan. The connection there it's a complete easy line to draw as you go through it because of what she's gone through. All the way to the torturous thing of having to meeting your grandma for hours and then she dies.
Exactly.
That's
that
rough.
was awful.
That's rough.
Oh.
And
It creates her.
It does. Yeah. Like, she got the Sister Night VHS, and she was like, she was telling her about the character, and she's like, she finally gets that one little small glimmer of hope before it's snatched away with her, from her by just fate and time. And again, it's that kind of like the universe is playing a joke on her, which is like another big kind of thing about Watchmen.
Mm-hmm. Think about how important that little moment in time is for her, because she's been told she can't watch that, and in a way that's in a whole different way. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. That's also you can't be vigilante, right? The grandma's there just long enough to tell her it's okay to watch.
Yeah. No,
It's okay.
that's
Yeah, because
Yeah,
I mean,
bro.
she knows about Will Reeves. She knows about who he was, and that whole thing. She was there for it. So it's a thing where like it's like over the years she's finally come to forgive Will a little bit from
Absolutely.
that episode.
Will's path was bigger than their relationship, and I mean that's hard for people to deal with. But sometimes with people, that's how it is.
yep.
Yeah, again, Will Reeves in that episode keeps getting oof. All right. So do we have any favorite moments of the show or like least favorite moments of the show? We
One of my
choose or
favorite
the
things
other.
in the whole show
Mhm.
is her Grand National car. Just gonna say it.
It's
That car is
it's a very good
badass.
car.
That car is awesome.
And Batmobile wishes.
I
Dude, that
think
thing is cool.
one of my favorite jokes from the show is when Adrian Veidt talks to Dr. Manhattan. He's like, "It's not the '80s anymore. People frown on this sort of appropriation." I thought that was a very funny joke.
Yes.
We know what people are gonna be thinking a little bit. Let's just
But Jeremy Irons, just in general, was quite good.
Mhm.
Killed it.
So, all right, the favorite joke. Okay, KP, what was your favorite moment of the show? You think
It was the scene with Louis Gossett Jr. and Angela.
the wounds need air speech? Yeah, 100%. I get that. I think my favorite moment, upon like thinking back and now that I rewatched the show, is it's either that segment in A Little Fear of Lightning where he what's his name? Oh, man. Because Wade does we didn't talk about this. Mirror Guy comes back. Looking Glass does come back in the final episode and kind of is able to save, well, not save the day, but like is able to bring Adrian to justice a bit. But I think my favorite like moment from the show is either Looking Glass just walking back after figuring out the truth about everything that Ozymandias has done, that Adrian has done, and he picks up the phone and just says things like, "What is real?" And you can just tell Angela's like, "Dude, I do not have time."
Yeah,
for your
I don't need to hear that.
Which is funny because like you would like expect to see like because like in any other moment that would be hilarious, but in that moment you're just kind of caught between emotions. Like I understand what you're saying, but also I realize that she's extremely frustrated because saying that out of the blue, it made me do an uncomfortable laugh, which I always enjoy. But I think my other favorite moment of the show would probably be that honestly I think it would be Dr. Manhattan's death. Because again, that one little line of just like "I'm in every moment with you" is just like, ooh, it's such a good moment, and just you can tell he's about to go, and he's finally happy, and he's like, "Oh, Doc, you finally found it," and then he just immediately eats it, which is a shame. All right, now we come to the end of the episode where we answer the question of the podcast, which is it a classic? Which once again, for those of us who are not here, in our definition of classic, and you can debate this if you want, is that it is either A, just relevant to the time and speaks to something. Number two is a time capsule of the time, a deeply representative of something in like the time period and speaks to that specific moment. Or something that just strikes at a cultural zeitgeist and possibly like shifts the needle in some way culturally, or it's like movie or show or whatever the case is. And now is when I get on my soapbox to make my argument for why I believe this show is the definition of a modern classic in the making, that like I feel like 10 years from now we're still going to like look back at Watchmen. Like I think that like people are going to sleep on it for a little bit, but I think that ultimately when people discuss like best TV shows or best like when we talk about the comic book just boom of the movies and TV shows and whatnot, people are going to point to Watchmen as like the pinnacle of like a lot in terms of quality, not in terms of like popularity, but just quality. End of the day, as to taking like the superhero genre and moving it, and because it's not only like the best superhero TV show I've seen thus far, I'd also argue it's better than a lot of the superhero films that we've seen. That like The Dark Knight, all the MCU, I loved all of them. Let's not get this twisted, but I feel like this is able to do something that those other ones haven't done because they take previously established characters and take the original premise of the comic and somehow enhance the comic, enhances the original source material, which is a very hard thing to do with even just an adaptation in general. Like, we can point to so many movies and so many TV shows that try to adapt like a comic or a movie or a book or something, and it's just never that good. And it doesn't add anything to the character, doesn't add anything, enhance anything. But this show is able to do that, I would argue, because it takes those archetypes, takes the themes of the original, and throws them into the modern day, and kind of exposes all these recent social ills. Because the showrunner of the show, Lindelof, literally does say that, like, when he was looking at, like, I want to set Watchmen today and have it be a sequel, he said, what is something that is equivalent to, like, the Cold War of the time period where Alan Moore wrote it? And he said it would be racism in America. That creates that stark divide that's kind of similar to it, so I'm going to talk about that. Which I feel like, again, kind of modernizes the original, or modernizes the show, but also doesn't keep it... It isn't dated, I wouldn't say. I think, I mean, it's very clearly a show from 2019, 2020, but it is not going to be, like, dated and be like, you're going to groan and roll your eyes and like, oh god, they're making those references. You know? And I would think that, like, it's a show I can see myself watching, like, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and just, it just encapsulates this moment in time so well. And I just, again, that whole final speech and that line really does it for me, which is, you can't heal under the mask. Wounds need air, you know? And now that I'm going to step off my soapbox, and what do we think? Because I don't get to decide in this, as if we agree it's a classic. Because you know my thoughts. Do you believe, gang, that it could be a modern classic? Throw it over to KP first.
It absolutely is in my mind. There's something to be said for scope, and I don't think that I don't know that it's fair to compare other comic book things to this, because the purpose of this is to address social issues where the vast majority of comics do that to some degree, but the two biggest problems we tend to have is our ability to get along with each other on a national scale and then on a one-on-one scale, and then cultures are mingling, and it tackles all of that. I don't know that anything else can ask itself to do that, and yet they tackled it and did it properly. So, or endably, yeah, I think it's perfect.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a one. That's one on my side. We love to hear it. Justin, what do we think?
I think it's definitely a classic for all those reasons y'all spoke to, but the main thing for me, though, was just the sheer wonderful characters, the way they were brought to life, the character development, the way the story arcs work, how everybody served a purpose, how the characters grew and changed, and their growing and changing made sense. It wasn't ridiculous. It wasn't the huge leaps or anything like that. It was all well...
Yeah. Unfortunately, our friend Justin's Wi-Fi cut out just when he was about to say...
That was well said.
It was well said. It was very well said. But yeah, we're going to throw it over really quickly to Jared, Senior John Wick Jared.
That's indeed me.
Yes,
so I would agree. I think I'm going to go against the grain. I know no one else agreed it was a classic, but I'm going to go against the grain and say yes, it is indeed a classic.
Oh,
wait,
okay.
that is not true, actually.
Pinnacle of comedy.
No, I think we are unanimously in agreement that it is indeed a classic. I already want to rewatch it, in all honesty.
Yeah,
I'm probably gonna wait like a month, just like give myself a little bit of time to like process it more, and then take another run at it. But it is something that I want to watch again, and I feel like does have more things to say that are just even beyond my first go at it. I might find new meaning, new intricacies, new little details that I love. And I super agree that just the characters being brought to life is awesome. I love character-driven stuff. That's why I like the comic really well too. Is because I love the characters, even if they're kind of awful people. It's just you love them. They just feel so vivid and alive, and they're growing and changing over the course of the comic. And I think this again feels very human and life affirming at its core, where it is, despite being about a bunch of really weird conceptual stuff, it still very much is about people trying to get by and trying to love and just live. And I think that that's one of the best features a piece of media can have, especially now.
Yeah, like it definitely does have that kind of life affirming thing. It is very character centric. Justin, you got cut off by the end. Did you want to finish up your thought?
Just the character development. That was my biggest takeaway again, and how strong the characters were, and how much I grew to really care about what happened to them throughout the whole series.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there will not be a season 2. But then again, I don't know if I would want one. It's the thing where it just perfectly ties itself into a bow, and I don't know. I'm fine with what we got, and I'm happy with what we got.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it's good.
I like the ending, and I keep comparing it to the comic, but I do really feel like they emulated the comic very well. At the end of the comic was just, you didn't really know what was going to happen in the future. Like the end of the comic being that, are they going to publish Rorschach's journal? What's going to happen? Are people going to find out? You don't know. Is Angela the next Dr. Manhattan? You just kind of don't know, but that's part of it. You still kind of feel like it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, that was Watchmen, HBO's Watchmen, parts 1 and 2. And so with that, we're going to call this episode. Next time, we're going to be looking at a movie, which is going to be a lot less work on our part, even though there's a lot to talk about with this specific movie, because next time we're going to talk about Bernard Rose's Candyman to get ready for the new movie coming out. Because
We're not doing Cobra.
we're not doing Cobra this. We can do Cobra next time.
Damn.
We can do Cobra next time. You didn't listen. I don't have to be the host all the time, but I'm gonna tackle the first 2 episodes, and after that, I can throw it over to you guys. But next episode we're gonna talk about is indeed Candyman, and I look forward to that discussion because there's a lot in that to take apart. But for me, for John Wick Jared, for Cobra Kai KP, for Bad Times at the El Justine, thank y'all. Thank y'all for stopping by. Thank y'all for listening. And I still don't have a good exit, and I got mocked last time for saying watch good things, so I won't say that. So, I don't know.
We will viciously mock you regardless of what you say, so
All right,
really
all right.
it's up to you.
Okay, well, cut. Then fine, we're leaving. Cut.